Everybody, welcome to the Friday and podcast. Today we're sitting down with George Veness. George, for those who don't know who you are, can you please introduce yourself?
I am the founder of Jab Boxing Club, which is in Mayfair, London. I've boxed since I was 6 years old, been boxing my whole life, and then wanted to make boxing accessible and bring it to the fitness industry, as I think it's an amazing way of training and it's an amazing environment to be in. It's super empowering for people. Yeah, that's it.
So what made you decide to start your own gym? You used to be a boxer. Sometimes the evolution is to become a professional and continue that path. What made you want to create your own gym and community?
I've been like since I've been boxing, growing up in a boxing gym, when you're in it from that young, it's such a part of your life. You're down there 4 or 5 times a week. And when you're, as an amateur boxer, you're going around the country constantly fighting in competitions. So these people come like an extension of your family. And there's a really wholesome way of being about that, and a really empowering way of being about that. And your coaches guide you through, difficult times. When you're stepping in the ring, boxing more than other sports, I've played rugby as well, but boxing more so, where there's a real fear that you're going through. Because stepping in the ring is quite an extreme thing to do because you're on your own. And I went on that process. I lived that life. And when I got towards sort of the end of my career, where I started to lose that fire in my stomach, I sort of had, I couldn't step away from the boxing gym. It was just somewhere where I just was so used to going. It was just part of me. So what I done was I started to train the fighters down there and started to help out and take them on pads. And then I sort of had I went through like a period where I didn't like the way I was boxing. I didn't enjoy the way I was fighting. So I started to get obsessed with the ways of fighting, the styles of fighting, the training methods that go into boxing. And that sort of unraveled itself over years, where I started to train the fighters, get really into that. And then that was what led me into the fitness industry. And when I got into the fitness industry, I was a fighter. I wasn't within the fitness industry. Like, I've never been to a festival. I wasn't going to other places. I was a boxing trainer. That was what I was. I've sort of noticed that it was super empowering for people. People love learning it. People love being around it. They love the vibe of it. And if you walk into an old boxing gym, which my one was, especially an old London one or any inner city gym, there's a different feel about them. And the way they push you, the way they get the best out of you, when they bring you together. And I thought that there was a massive opening for that and a massive gap for that in the market. And I thought that it should be a part of people's lives. So for me, what I wanted to do was take, the types of training that you have on the GB squad, or you have when you're fighting for England, and you have these sort of methods of training where they're training, you've got a group of athletes and a group of fighters training all at one time. How can I bring that level of training, bring that environment, bring that community, bring that feeling that gives you courage, that empowers you, that gets you in the best shape of your life, and bring that to the fitness industry and make it super accessible for people? Because obviously when you're on that journey and you're in your day-to-day life, everyone goes through moments of struggle, moments where they feel down, moments where they lose a bit of confidence, whatever that is. And I think that training in general is a really good way to keep you grounded. It's a really good way to keep your feet on the ground, relieve stress, and just keep a level head. And for me, boxing was my tool to do that. And that was what I wanted to bring to people.
When did you shift then, I guess, from like the athlete mindset to the business owner? When did that hit?
About 6 months ago. I don't know. I don't think like I've ever gone through a point of thinking my mindset has switched to that.
Yeah.
I think that I've always, it's just been instinctual. It's been something that I've just been in. It's been something that I've wanted to be a part of. It's been something that I wanted for myself. So I've ended up creating that,
But were you, as a kid or when you were boxing, were you kind of entrepreneurial, or was it just, I'm focusing on the boxing and it's been kind of a natural journey to then?
No, I was entrepreneurial. I was like, I used to, I don't know, everyone has these sort of stories and they're quite generic, right? But my thing of entrepreneurial at a young age of like 10, 11 years old is I would go to same wholesale shops that normal corner shops would go, buy loads of stuff and then sell them to all to my dad's friends. That was my first step of entrepreneurial stuff. I used to go and buy like tarpaulin sheets and and sell them to all my dad's friends. That was the first thing of like 8 years old. That was what I was doing. If I look back at that, so I had that natural instinct to do that, and I think success is a major driver for me. Why? Because if you grow up, in sort of a council estate or whatever it is, and for me, I felt that growing up around people that I felt like no one felt like they was in control of their destiny or where they was going in life. And it was important for me growing up around that I made it happen. And if I wanted to go and get that, or I wanted to achieve that, I would go out and do it. So my quest to do business and to create a brand and to create something that, people love and impacts people's lives and create success in a way, is sort of fueled by them experiences. Do you know what I mean?
So going from that entrepreneurial itch where you're doing little things as a kid, what led you in the path towards boxing? Can you tell us some time about your early days training and where that hunger came from? Also, you mentioned you really got into the technical side of things, so I'd love to know more about that as well.
My brother went boxing, and my brother's about 8 years older than me, and then I followed him. Our granddad took us, and I went down the gym, and you go down there, and it's so intimidating. I remember the first time walking in, I was wearing a West Ham football kit, and you sort of you'll get it will chuck you in sparring, you'll get beat up for a few weeks, and then you'll start to get the hang of it, and then you're in it. Do you know what I mean? Once you get into that realm of like, the thing with boxing is it's very similar to business or life, where it's a roller coaster in terms of, say you're sparring a few times a week, 1 out of the 2 spars you'll spar well, but then ones when you spar bad, it's not like going on a football pitch and losing a football game. You're getting punched in the face. So the feeling of sparring bad it don't feel great, So when you go on that, you've got to become quite resilient. Do you know what I mean? But on the other hand, the highs of it are extremely high. If I think about winning my first fight or winning my first national title, you feel it, there is no feeling that matches it. I've not experienced much that matches that, because you train for this event and you'll go through it like you'll fight every week and you've got to win it. If you win that title, the feeling of that is, it's extraordinary.
So you weren't just going into it casually. You knew you wanted to like go in and absolutely smash it, and the people in the gym were there supporting you. So you got to feel that, I guess, sense of community.
When you grow up in a boxing gym that's quite competitive, and I'll say inner city gyms, they're normally more competitive than others, because you've got loads of kids living in an area where no one's got much. So you go into a gym, same as football, same as most sports that take that level of grit. And I think when you experience that and you're around that, you're either someone who's going to sink or swim, literally. Like, you're either going to go in there and be an average fighter, or you're going to be in there to be the best. My natural instinct was, I want to be the best one in there. I want to win a national title. I want to get to that level. Obviously, when you're young, you're thinking you want to win a world title, And I think that the top fighters, the elites, that fear of losing and that drive, they never lose that. And that stays with them. Now, that is incredibly hard. Like, because most of you say you win 20 fights in a row, or you win a few titles, and you're like, you think you're the nuts, everyone's praising you and everyone thinks you're great. It's so easily done to let the mindset slip. And I think what's interesting about the elite of the elite is they still have that driving them. They must do. What else is driving them? Do you know what I mean? That's how they keep their finger on the pulse. That's how they perform at that level consistently,
And when did you go then, I guess, from, again, that mindset to then, I want to take this to the people, because you've gone from an athlete, which is, really about yourself and driving your own ability, to then saying, actually, I'm going to put other people first. What was that shift?
I mean, there's many reasons, right? I got to a level where I thought, do I think I'm going to win a world title? And if I win a world title, do I think I'm going to have financial success? Literally, it was that black and white for me. No, I don't. I think I might do all right if I maintain that level of consistency. It it's rare in boxing where you get like an AJ or a Floyd Mayweather that end up doing really well. Most fighters come out of it and they have to go back and work after it. And my thought was, if I'm going to dedicate, if I took the same energy and I took the same drive and the same passion and put it into business, I'd be a lot more successful. Why? Because a fighter will have a cap at 25 or 30. It's most athletes where they're done, right? They get to that age and it's over, you know, and they've got to go in and find something else. And boxing, unlike, you know, if you look at football, if you go in the Premier League, you're probably going to be set up for life because of the pay, right? Whereas with boxing, you look at fighters and you think, you know, they're on TV, they must be doing all right. It's rare that someone is set up for life, you know? Yeah. So I think for me, I thought if I could take that energy and apply that to business and apply that to a career, by the time I hit 30, I'm gonna have momentum, you know, like a business person. By the time they hit their mid-40s, they're thriving because they've had all these 15 years of experience or 20 years of experience and failures and lessons, and then networking. And by the time they hit that age, they're like, you're on your way. Whereas an athlete, you have to start again. And as soon as I realised that, it was like my mindset flipped and I went to there. But that was in the midst of being a trainer. And then once I went into the fitness industry and I went from training people in the East End and training fighters and cab drivers and stuff like that to Notting Hill. Never been to Notting Hill before in my life, right? And I went there in Westbourne Grove and it's so nice, isn't it? You know, and I went to there and it was like a sort of a change in mindset of like, this is my break. You know, this is where I've got to make something of this. And seeing the impact that boxing had on people. And I was naturally good at it. I love being a coach. I love what I do. I love teaching people it. You know, that was sort of where I went from it.
So did Jab start in Notting Hill, or what was the journey to Jab then?
No, I left that gym. I wasn't very good at working for someone. I'm a terrible employee, to be honest with you. So I left that gym. I went out, started, you know, sort of restarted. I had a couple of clients that I left with. I had 2 clients that I left with. I've rebuilt a client base. And I rebuilt a client base in sort of West London and around that area. And then I ended up with a really good PT business. Really good PT business. It was solid, you know.
Just solely PT or boxing PT?
Boxing PT. Yeah, when I mostly train people in boxing. I love boxing, you know. Yeah. And it wasn't enough for me. You know, going round to people's homes and training them, it was all right. It just was like, you know, I've done it. My day to day, going into a gym, and this is what I love about boxing, and this is what I'm trying to bring. Going into a gym and training with people, and being in that environment is what I love about it. Having the goal and the vision, and trying to reach something and doing it together as a team. That's what I love about it. So
there's something I'm really curious about though. You obviously said like your background's from the East End, those like classic traditional boxing gyms. And you mentioned the first Jab was at Notting Hill, and earlier downstairs you said
Jab wasn't at Notting Hill. Jab was at Mayfair.
So the Jab's in Mayfair.
My first job in the fitness industry was in Notting Hill.
So I still guess though, those are, not to go into a whole class thing, those are higher income areas. Yeah. And what's quite interesting is you always hear people from, you know, like East End, like lower economic backgrounds, there's more of that community feel. Yeah. But then as you start, you know, as you get to nicer areas and stuff, the neighbours maybe aren't as friendly and stuff, not to make generalisations. How did you find that adapting from maybe a different community of people to a new community?
I think environment and people you mix with is everything. You know, I think being around smart people, being around people that inspire you, for me, that's you know, as if I live my everyday life, as long as I'm getting that, I'm pretty happy, because that's where I get my thrills. So for me, going and training people that were of success and talking to them and learning from them and absorbing that was like, this is amazing. Do you know what I mean? I was mixing with people who I've never dreamed of being around, you know, and from all walks of life. Yeah. So you sort of go into that, and for me, it was like, you know, this is what it's all about. Jab, for instance, is a boutique class concept. So that's really accessible. Why? Because in amateur boxing, amateur boxing, you've got a club that has loads and loads of fighters training at one time, right? That was where I fell in love with boxing. So for me, boutique fitness resembled it in terms of I could bring a group of people together and train them together. The other side of it was I got obsessed with the training philosophies, the way the Cubans train, the way the Russians train, the way the British trained, the way loads of different countries train their fighters to be able to get them to a level where they could go in the Olympics, win titles, become world level, right? So for me, it was like bringing them both together. I'm taking all the knowledge that I've learned from boxing and obsessing about it, and then I'm taking the amateur boxing club, the love of it, and then bringing it together. So I'm creating a boutique class concept where the training philosophy is really thought about. Why? Because I believe that you can up the game in terms of the quality of training in the fitness market. The other thing is I'm bringing people together and I'm making it at a really accessible price point.
But yeah, so from your side, like as you kind of moved around, like did you feel that you had to change at all?
What's interesting about cities, if I'm honest, is that you can meet people from all around the world, all walks of life. If you're a nice person, you're genuine, you're respectful, most people will like you. Do you know what I mean? And I think that, you know, authenticity is the most important part, even of a brand, right? If you're creating a brand, you want a brand that's authentic. First and foremost, be authentic. Don't copy other people. Try and do what's true to you. And I think that what people find really hard is they find it hard to find what is really true to them. I think anyway, I think I had to go on that search of that, even creating Jab, I had to go on that search of who am I? Where am I from? What is the life I've lived that has really inspired me? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? To be able to create something that is truly authentic to me.
Well, so those were great questions, George, but what would you say to anybody listening? How could somebody figure out who they truly are? Asking those questions is one thing, but what got you to the point?
Do a load of therapy.
Yeah. We really should have got sponsored by a therapist.
Talking to people, journaling, you know, thinking about points in your life that really inspired you or points in your life that really drive you. You know, if I think back to my journey, I know points of my upbringing that really fuel me. So even when I'm training or when I'm doing something like that, I'll have points that, see, when you get to that point where you go, shit, this is tough now, you've got to dig deep, points that will really fuel that. And I think that what a good coach will do is them points of struggle, them points where you've got to dig deep, they bring that out in you. And they're really good at it. If you look at like a Cus D'Amato who trained Mike Tyson, he was really, really, really good. And then you got to think, these old guys, they was like psychologists, these world-class boxing trainers. If you look at someone like that, he took someone like a Tyson, right, who was a freak of nature. We're never going to see a fighter like him again in our lifetime, right? He took someone like that and got him to harness everything that he experienced in his life, all of the downs, all of the bad times, all of his physical attributes, and harness him as a fighter. Now, if you think of that, when you watch Mike Tyson, you might not think of it, but when you go there and think of that, that guy was with Tyson from about 14 years of age, and he taught him how to harness his fear, how to make other fighters fear him in that way. That's incredible, you know?
Yeah. I think that's so important, isn't it? Like when I meet entrepreneurs and founders, it's just like, don't lose sight of your journey, because that journey is going to massively influence and should be the most influential factor to what you're creating. You know, there's nothing worse than someone going like, you know, I call it like pub talk. It's like, oh, you know, what business or brand shall I start today? You know, or like when they're like, oh, I just haven't got a good idea. And it's like, to your point, you just need to kind of really think about who you are as a person, and that will lead, you know, to the biggest and best opportunity for you personally.
Definitely. And I think that we don't want more of the same. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that's the difference between creative and the sort of operational mindset, right? So operational mindset will take that creative idea and make it financially successful, right? But that creative will bring the soul and will bring something to that brand that people just love about it and they don't know why they love it. And I think it's really important to identify the two and don't lose sight of the both of them. And most of the time, if brands grow and they get bought out, they end up completely corporate, operational and soulless. And it's important not to lose that, because at the end of the day, that there is what gives us joy in our life, you know? And that there is what, is what can fuel us every day and what makes us feel wholesome and what makes us feel like when I put that t-shirt on or when I drink that coffee out of that certain cup, that's what gives us these little bits of joy in our life day to day,
Yeah. And that's the thing of me and you obviously have spoken about it a load, but just that, when we first met, that instant kind of alignment of values, isn't it? And when we talked about Jab in detail and just like, this is, again, it's you personally taking all of your experience, putting it together, and at no point, you want to sacrifice that, and you're really looking at this, I kind of always talk about legacy, this is for you. It is your legacy, and again, I think from our perspective, that's what really excites us and interests us, in the brand is that, as I say, you have this history, this authenticity with the journey that you've come on, but you're also thinking like, how do I at all costs protect that? And I think, again, for me, that's like, it's so important because you meet so many people now where it's very short term. It's, how do I get or do this, and this is kind of the exit goal or whatever, and it's, for me, it's people like you that are really, the ones that are going to lead the way with regards to building, amazing, thoughtful kind of consumer brands rather than, to your point, just more of the same,
Well, if you look at the brands that we remember and brands that have come through maybe 2 lifetimes, one that always sticks in my mind is like Ralph Lauren, and you look at that brand and you think, that is exceptional. Do you know what I mean? Like if you go in that shop on Bond Street, it's like he has brought a whole lifestyle together and created a look around that lifestyle that he loves and he's into, and his documentary is obviously exceptional. That for me is where the joy is in it. It's not, obviously we all want to be financially successful, and you start the journey and you obviously want to be financially successful. That's why everyone's doing it. Is money's the main, it's a driver. But I think that if that overrules that, you will lose the soul in it. And I think it's really important to separate both. Like my full joy will become when I can purely sit on one side. And I know that. So it's, for me, how do I build a team that really support my weaknesses and support where I'm not good and support the stuff that my mind just don't work like that,
Well, so how are you doing that? Because you've mentioned you're building a team, and Sam just touched on the fact that you guys met and have done things together as well. So how are you building that team internally and outside partnerships? Sam, like after, can you guys tell the story of how you two know each other?
So how do I build it? Honestly, my team has come from my clients. Yeah, everything I've done has come from my clients. So my MD, who was a client of ours, was like one of our best clients, trained with us 8 times a week, literally. My head of ops was a client who come in, then worked as a consultant for a long time, has come on as that. And their mind works different to mine and they're really good at it. And I think that as a new brand and as a new company, like big companies can go in and they're going to go, I'm going to give you a big wage because you're an expert in that field, and you'll sit there and you'll do it. Whereas I think in a startup, passion wins. And I think you can quite easily, once you get the sort of the metrics of business and the way it's engineered, you can go into it and you can see where people should be sitting on the spectrum. You can see by having a conversation and by watching someone's daily habits or the way they react to a conversation or the way they react to a process, if you put them under pressure, what their natural instincts will be. My natural instincts will fall on one end of the spectrum. An operational mindset might fall on the details and the numbers and be specific on that. And I think it's about understanding that. Where do you sit on the spectrum? And then if you're really passionate about making this brand successful, I'm sure you'll get there. If you look at a Nike, that was what they did. And I think that most brands will get started, even a Gymshark I think is the same. Most brands get started by people that ain't skilled or ain't got years and years and years of experience, but people who are super passionate about the goal and the vision.
That's really cool that the people, so it's all been people you train.
Yeah.
And have you just been lucky they've come from a specific background that's relevant to the business? And have they been like, I'd love to work for you? Or have you been like, I'd like you to work for me? How's that come about?
It's more their passion. Like, passion wins, right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like the thing is you're always going to you're always going to hit obstacles along the way, right? And dents in the road, etc. That's just life, and that's just business, and that's whatever journey you go on is the same. If you want to master any subject, it's always the same. And I think that if you're super passionate about something, you'll find a way around it, and you'll find a way to overcome it. And if you're smart, you'll figure it out. Yeah. So that's really important for me.
I think when we met, like what was obvious to me, so the kind of story between me and George was that my old business partner works with George and his management team, and Dan, who I'm talking about, knows that I'm a brand guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with brands, and hence why we started, Friday and I basically had a quick look at, Jab from a social, as you do, went on social media, and I was like, this is a bit of me. I like this. And then, actually thought, right, I'm going to go down and meet George, and instantly kind of was fell in love with the whole story, just really, again, with your passion, with your vision. But the thing that stood out to me, and again, I think to what George has just said, is like, you've always had this, really kind of collaborative mindset. There are founders out there that are very, not tunnel vision, maybe that's a bit harsh, but just kind of it's their way or the highway. Whereas, the entrepreneurs and founders, I think that, I really find interesting and want to work with are the ones that, understand that they're not the smartest in the room, but they definitely do not at any point want to kind of risk their vision, and I think it's really important to get that kind of balance, like understand how important it is to kind of work with people. Everybody has, different strengths and weaknesses. But I think to your point earlier about like Ralph Lauren, for example, it's got to come from like the founders with regards to the actual like vision. And that's the kind of non-negotiable, isn't it? And I think when we met, it was all about that. It was like, it's your vision, but then around that, you've built an amazing team. And I think that's like, for me, what really excites me around Jab, and everything has real kind of reason behind it. Whereas again, you can find so many brands where there's a lot of holes in there, whereas everything is connected, and it really does, reflect your journey, I think.
I think meeting, when we first sat down and spoke, you was the first person who I've spoke to where it was like, shit, he looks at business in the same way. Like, do you know what I mean? He's interested in the brand and that side of it, and how it makes sense and the story of it, and that was super interesting to me, and how can we create something exceptional? Do you know what I mean?
I mean it in the most positive way. You're both obsessed, like obsessed with making things work, obsessed with staying true to you, especially obsessed with keeping things authentic and real and building a business.
Yeah, it's what's funny, but it's so frustrating because authentic and community have become like buzzwords. They are. But that is what I'm obsessed about. It's like everything happens and everything that we do, and through Jab or through Friday, and everything has to have some real meaning behind it. And I'm like, when I work in a brand, and any action that we're taking from a brand or marketing perspective, I'm like, what is the meaning or purpose behind that? Like, and if there isn't a meaning and you're forcing something, that's where things are going to go wrong. And I think that's where we kind of have always aligned, is like that. To your point, that obsessive kind of personality, but making sure everything has real thought behind it, and we're not trying to like just create something for the sake of creating something. And I think where Jab's really exciting for me is like with that mindset and with George's kind of personal like lifestyle and his journey, is Jab can become so much more than just a fitness concept. It is a true brand. And we always have spoken about like, what is the actual ecosystem? How do we make people feel part of that brand, but more so than just say turning up to a class?
Well, that's a really good question. And like you said, some of those words have become buzzwords. So then what really makes it individual and matter is, what does that mean to you? And on what you just said, Sam, what is community to you, George? How have you built that, and how do you go deeper on that each and every time?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because like along the journey, I've always overthought it. Authenticity was a natural thing for me. I read a book by a guy called Wally Hollins. Do you know Wally Hollins?
No.
Wally Hollins is like a sort of brand phenomenon, basically. The book's called Brand New, and I read this book, and it was the first book I read in business that was like, shit, I get that, okay. And basically the whole thing was, how do you create something that's authentic? That was what it come down to. and what is authenticity. And, you know, a good brand is authentic, and it's normally authentic to the founder's story and what they've been through and what they're in love with, you know. So that was, you know, that was that journey that I went on. Community for me, and it's interesting because like when you're front facing every day and you're on the floor every day and you're mixing with customers every day, how is that a natural thing for you? And for me, it's literally, I'll treat everyone like they're my mate. And I don't have no sort of, you know, obviously I'm there as a coach, but the way I look at it is, as a coach, you're like a pillar. And you're a pillar in terms of you're a dose of positivity in someone's life daily. That's what you're doing, right? Yeah, I'm training people through boxing, but I believe that I could do most skills in terms of I could teach Pilates and teach yoga and still get a good result, you know, in terms of as a coach, boxing's my tool that I'll teach people through. But as a coach, you're there just to get the best out of someone in that hour. That's what you're there for. And you're there to make someone feel welcome, you know. And I think that it's about harnessing that skill, because the coach will bring the community together and they'll bring people together. And I think if you have that energy about you, people will naturally come and make friends with each other. And that's what happens. And you're that meeting point and you're that person that brings that together. And I think that if you're creating a team of coaches, which obviously is what we are, and our coaches are our products, they're our ones that do that. They need to be good at that. They need to, you know, they need to understand that if they turn up in a bad mood and someone's paying to come to experience them, they're going to affect that person's day. So their job is to be, and they've got to be on form. They've got to be, you know, they've got to understand that they are a leader in their own right. You know, they're leading their community and their team of clients in that session, and they've got to represent that and inspire them and make them perform in the best way they can day in, day out. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's a real skill. It's a real skill to be able to do that.
So speaking of overused phrases, I guess it's very much the philosophy of your vibe attracts your tribe. Like the energy you put in, the people you draw in, it's the right kind of people, and that's why you've been able to build such like an amazing gym. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're doing it day in, day out, you can only be your natural self, right? You know, otherwise it becomes, you sort of like, you can't hide it once you know.
Probably start to resent it because it's not real. It's not true to you.
Yeah, it has to be what you enjoy doing, you know. Like I enjoy coaching. I enjoy turning up and doing that side. I really enjoy it. Yeah. I enjoy training a group of people. I enjoy performing because there's an element of that. And that's just, you know, that's my thing.
And what does the future of Jab look like for you? Where do you see things going? Again, you're a visionary. You must be thinking 5-10 years out and have ideas and, you know, be creative in your own head, so to speak. Like, where do you see things going?
I want Jab to be the face of boxing. That's what I want it to do. I want it to sit as, if you think of boxing training, you think of Jab. That's what I want it to do. What Nike done for running trainers, you know, in terms of that. Why? Because I think that obviously you have the other brands, you know, for me, why do I want that? Because I think that we can create something that's super special, create a lifestyle and create a way of living that really impacts someone's life, you know, and really improves their life and becomes a real positive impact of their day. And that's what Jab has become. I get messages regular from clients that have achieved results and you know, and achieve things by our training philosophy and what we do. And they're super impactful, you know, like that's like, shit, you know, this is real. Like you are really impacting people. So that's what I want Jab to become.
How do you plan to do that? How do you think you can do that? And you've mentioned yourself, slightly noisy space.
Yeah. I think that you do that. It's the same as Starbucks done it with coffee. You do it with one customer at a time. You know, literally, in terms of every interaction that you have day to day will impact your success or not. Because if you have a good interaction and you have a good impact on people, then people will go away and tell 2 other people. And if you have a bad one, then people will go away and tell 2 other people. And that's really important to understand, I think. For me, I want to take Jab around the world. One of my dreams is to open it in New York. Why? Because that's where sort of boutique fitness started. And that's where you get some of the best trainers in this game. So I want to mix amongst that. You know, and I also think New York's a sort of city where it's like a concrete jungle and everyone's on that drive to perform and be successful and achieve that goal. And I think nothing tells that story or nothing impacts you more than boxing. You know, boxing is, Teddy Atlas said it, who was one of Tyson trainers, boxing's a metaphor for life. It really is. Once you get into it, it really is. Especially once you get into trying to create a business, because it's a roller coaster and you get punched in the face daily, you know, and you have to learn how to keep your cool and you have to learn how to stick to your strategy and you have to learn how to keep a level head. And that's what boxing is. Do you see what I mean? Mm. And I think that every boxing brand that's been created in the fitness industry has been created by someone that's not authentic to boxing. Yeah. That's it.
So with the business journey, and again, like you see a lot of, you know, founders talk and it's all quite positive, but we both know it ain't that simple. So it's like where have the blows come across your kind of journey or in your journey, I guess?
I think that if you're in the people industry, I think that people are probably one of the hardest things to work out and manage, and they're unpredictable and people are emotional. You know, and yourself is emotional, and you know, like we said, if like that thing of I have to turn up every day and you do it one customer at a time, one person at a time, yeah, you go away from that and you go, that's simple, but do that day in, day out. Do you know what I mean? That's what makes it so hard. For me, my biggest lessons have been in people, and my biggest lessons have been be calm. You know, like you first get into business and you've got all this energy and you've got all this drive and you've got all this vision, and you're that spikes and it goes up and down and it goes left, right and all over the place. And I think that the good leaders that I've met, they're really calm. And the way I think of it is like a Bruce Lee. You know, if you put Bruce Lee into a situation, Bruce Lee ain't going to go into that situation and be like a lunatic. He's going to go in it, he's going to be poised, he's going to be calm, he's going to know he's going to react. And it's the same as a world level fighter. And I think that's what you learn, and that's maturity, and I think that's wisdom. And I think that as a young founder, I've really had to learn that. It's been one of my biggest lessons, because I have so much drive and so much passion, and I really feel it with every part of my being that that's what I want to achieve, and I want to take Jab around the world, and that's what I want to do. And then you've got to harness that in the right way. Otherwise, it can spiral and be all over the place. And I think it's really learning that.
So in the days when you're really not feeling it, what do you do?
Train.
Yeah? Train out that energy.
Yeah, I train, meditate, you know, write stuff down. I've been journaling once a week. It seems to help a lot. I train 5 to 6 times a week. The more pressure I'm under, the more I train. Why? Because it helps you keep your feet on the ground. And I think that it helps you harness yourself. And I think that when you're going through business, nothing's predictable. You know, you can look at any company, you know, even if you read Shoe Dog, they get to a point when they're just about to IPO, where they're close to IPOing and they're still on that brink. You don't know what's going to happen, you know, even though you can see that vision, you don't know. But I think what's important is maintaining the faith, maintaining the vision and maintaining the belief. And I think as long as you do that, you'll find a way and you'll be successful. And I think don't get too carried away with the negativities or the noise from the outside. And it's what you said to me, innit, a couple of weeks ago, you know, don't worry about other people. You just stay focused and you stay in your lane and you keep your blinkers on. I think that's super important, you know.
And has that been a game changer for you then, just not seeing what your competitors are doing, not looking what the outside space is doing, but just focusing on Jab, your people, and moving forward and building that way?
I do look at competitors, and I do market research regular, and it's something that's been new for me over the last 6 to 8 months. I do market research regular. However, for me, I don't look at them as competitors, whereas I used to. I used to look at them and think, oh, another gym, oh no, like it. You know, well, that means you don't believe in your own journey enough, and that means you don't believe in yourself and your own brand enough. So for me, I'll go these and I'll go into like, you know, like I went into a Barry's bootcamp a couple of weeks ago and it was humming. I don't look at that business and go, you know, oh, this and that and whatever. I look at it and go, that's special. Mm-hmm. You know, to get a business to there and get a brand to there over that period of time, that's like a well-oiled machine. That's special. And I think that my mindset's changed over the last year or so, and I had kids and stuff like that. And I think since my mindset changed, I feel much more wholesome towards what I'm doing. And I think that what's quite simple, and I think we spoke about this in terms of if it don't feel right, ain't usually right. If it don't feel right for me to sit there and crunch numbers, I probably shouldn't be doing it. Do you know what I mean? If it feels right for me sitting on brand and that's what I really love, like on my day off, I will go into brands just to experience it and just to feel it and see the way they brung it together, from the logo, from the music, from the smell, from the product, that's what I love. Do you know what I mean? So that's probably where I should sit, you know? And I think that if that feels wholesome to you, you'll end up being successful, you know?
Yeah. So as the business, you know, obviously you've got huge ambition, you know, and you want to scale this and you want to touch as many people as possible, you know, through boxing. And it's like, how do you feel that you can do that and maintain it? You know, you talk about Ralph and you talk about Barry's, you know, and it's like they've got to that point where they're everywhere. They're a you know, globally recognized brand, and there's still that consistency. How do you think that you can do that?
I think it's two things. I think it's one thing necessarily. Don't lose sight of the details. For me, I'm a product guy. I'm a product and brand guy. So for me, I'll obsess about the product, down to the finest detail. Why? Because if I'll do a training session, I don't want it to be shit. So I'll obsess about that. If I lose sight of that, and I lose sight of the brand, and I lose sight of, you know, what that design's like, or what that experience is like, or what the music's like, or what the smell's like, or then people will end up having a bad experience. That drive, that ambition, that want needs to be so obsessive that every one of your team feels it and knows it. Then your team have to harness that vision, and you have to have the confidence that they can deliver that as well. That's how I think you do it. For me, it comes down to right now, it comes down for me to create an exceptional trainer team in terms of where my trainers are amazing, you know, where they can go out and they can inspire loads and loads of people, and people love doing their class. People love doing their training session. It's them details. Don't lose sight in them, I believe, and build a team that believes in that vision and is in line with it. That's how I think you do it. And I think that is a daily pursuit. I think that is something that you can never lose sight on, something that you can never overlook. And for me, the way I relate it to boxing is, if a fighter goes in the gym and they think that they're the best fighter in the world and they do a mile less on their run, they don't make weight as easy, they don't sleep as well, and they dial down that 1% in everything they do, they suddenly lose. And that's the difference. But what drives that? What drives that is the want to be successful, and the want to create something spectacular, and the want to create a legacy. I think you can never lose sight of that. And I think when you do, probably it's your time to step back.
I like it. I like your methods there. It's one coach at a time, one new person to train at a time, one new gym at a time. It's all very methodical, and that's great for legacy.
Absolutely. Thank you, George.
Cheers, Sam.
Thank you,
Thanks,
George.
Johnny.
Cheers.